We're so resilient as people that we can deal with a lot of stuff. And if you pull back on the intensity and you give your body a chance to heal, we're also remarkable healers. You give yourself the right ingredients, we'll heal from a lot. And I had to go through that experience firsthand, and people watched me go through that experience, and they're like, Marcus, what are you doing? I want to try that. What's that thing? And so I had to give it a name. I intentionally gave it a name to let it create an identity. And now it's like a couple years into it. It's like there's a very, clear look and feel to doing functional bodybuilding workouts.
This is episode number 117 with Marcus Philly. This episode is brought to you by ButcherBox. I'm very excited to share with you a brand new offer from ButcherBox this month. In addition to $20 off your first order, ButcherBox is giving away free burgers all summer long. If you go to butcherbox.com/Julie before August 8th, you'll receive a pack of 6 free burgers in every single box you receive from now all the way until October 15th. If you've been listening to Pursuing Health, it should not come as a surprise to you that I care a whole lot about where my food comes from, and that's especially true when it comes to meat. I do believe that meat can have a place in a well-rounded diet, but there's a huge difference when it comes to animals raised in feedlots that are fed primarily corn and soy and routinely given growth hormones and antibiotics, and those that are responsibly raised, fed their natural diet, and not given any of these growth hormones or antibiotics. It's really, really hard to find high-quality meat like this these days, but ButcherBox makes it super easy because they deliver 100% grass-fed and finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage breed pork, and wild Alaskan sockeye salmon directly to your doorstep. All of their products are humanely raised and never ever given antibiotics or hormones. This gives me personally peace of mind because I know that I can trust my meat is the highest quality out there and is going to taste amazing. Plus, they offer free shipping anywhere in the contiguous 48 United States, which is awesome. ButcherBox has put together a very special deal for all Pursuing Health listeners from now until August 8th. When you order your first box, you'll get $20 off plus a pack of 6 free burgers in every single box you receive from now until October 15th. This is the perfect way to celebrate summertime with lots of outdoor grilling. Once again, that's butcherbox.com/Julie to get $20 off your first order and free burgers all summer. But hurry up and check it out now because the deal is going to end on August 8th. Welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm Julie Fouché, family medicine resident and former CrossFit Games athlete. Here, I bring to you information and inspiration from experts and everyday individuals for how to use lifestyle to maximize health. Thank you so much for joining me. Now let's get started with this week's episode. Hey there, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to Pursuing Health. In this episode, I am very excited to share a conversation that I had with Marcus Philly, who it turns out I have a lot in common with, but this was the first time we really got a chance to sit down and chat. Marcus is a 6-time CrossFit Games athlete. He's also the owner of Revival Strength, and he's a catalyst behind the functional bodybuilding movement that you may have heard about. As I also just recently learned, Marcus is a former medical school student, but he eventually decided to step away from medicine in order to help people improve their health through training. Marcus has a background as a Division I soccer player at the University of California, Berkeley, where he also earned a degree in molecular biology. He currently lives in Northern California with his wife and his 2 young children. Marcus and I had a great conversation about the many different parallels in our lives. We talked about our decisions of pursuing medical training, the application process, our competitive CrossFit careers, and ultimately discovering our true purpose. Marcus also shed some light upon the distinction between functional bodybuilding and other styles of training, as well as why lifestyle stressors are a huge consideration when it comes to earning intensity in a workout. A few quick reminders before we get started with the podcast. First, this episode is produced by CrossFit Beyond the Whiteboard, the best workout tracking in the biz and the one I've been using since 2009. You can learn more at beyondthewhiteboard.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, please head over to iTunes to subscribe and consider giving it a rating. I'm also always looking for inspiring stories to share. So if you or someone you know has used lifestyle to overcome a serious health challenge, please send your story to me at info@juliefouché.com. Finally, please remember that although I am now officially a doctor, this podcast is meant to share the experiences of individuals and does not provide medical advice. So with that, let's get started with episode number 117 of Pursuing Health featuring Marcus Philly.
Welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm really excited to be here with Marcus Philly, so thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, Julie, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be chatting with you, and I feel like this has been a conversation long time coming, and we can probably get into why. But your medical background, my brief medical background, and just made me want to have this conversation for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we ran into each other just by chance at Whole Foods in Columbus and connected, and now we're making this happen. So long overdue, as you said. Awesome.
That's where all the best chance meetings have happened for me are at Whole Foods in various cities around competitions.
Right. You always meet so many people. I remember my mom so Chuck Carswell was my first judge of my first event at the CrossFit Games in 2010. And my mom met him at Whole Foods, and now they have this like running joke where they just always see each other at Whole Foods. So
that's funny. My first coach in fitness was James Fitzgerald, and I bumped into him at Whole Foods in 2010 at the games, and I had like my starstruck moment, and then we became close after that. It's kind of similar stories.
Where it all happens. Cool. Well, as you said, we have a lot to talk about. I thought maybe just for people listening to kind of get to know your background, we could start with that. So just what you were into as far as sports growing up, what you were interested in like early school, high school, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was into kind of anything sport related when I was younger. I mean, the way sports kind of lined up when I was younger, it was like I could play soccer, I could play some baseball, and then there was like I could dabble in some other things. That's how the timing would work out. I couldn't play football and soccer because they were at the same time, and I got into soccer early. So I don't know that I was like really drawn to any sport like this is my passion, aside from golf, which was like a total passion of mine. But
interesting.
All the other sports were just like about physical expression, and I didn't know that until I was like more in college, when I was playing soccer in college, and I saw people like in love with the game, and people were asking me like, oh, what teams do you follow? Like international teams, you watch the English Premier League? And I was like, no, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I just want to go out and, like train and be fit and like do the physical aspect of the sport. But yeah, that was kind of the thing that really connected all the different sport experiences I had, was just this love for, being physical. It's probably why I fizzled out of baseball early, was because it wasn't that physical. Soccer was such a great connection for me to my physicality. I became a goalkeeper early on, and goalkeeper fitness training and sport training was kind of similar to like what I learned about CrossFit early on, which is like kind of short, powerful, more intense. The early days of CrossFit before it became like an endurance event, it was more of like doing Fran and doing Diane, doing things quickly. That was what I was really loved. And then alongside my athletic background was sort of this like math and science kid who just excelled in anything that had numbers and had formulas and had a recipe to it. If there was like a lot of creativity and a lot of thinking outside the box, like in some of my literature classes or English classes, I would perform well in the classes, but it was always the hardest for me. Like, AP Chem, no problem. English 1, like it was like,
you had to put a lot of work into that one.
It was torture for me. Yes. I had to put a lot of work in. So that's my background, and that kind of carried me all the way through, college and undergrad, and then some graduate school.
Okay. And you played soccer in college?
Yeah, I played at UC Berkeley, and I was, that was a weird transition, because like, and maybe there's college athletes that listen or people know this, like most high school, like if you're a college athlete, you were like a superstar in high school or to some level. And then you get to college and then everyone's really good. And I went from being like the starter to like the bench warmer for 3 years. And it was a huge shakeup for me. I was like, oh, well, what does it mean to just, like take away that built-in sort of positive reinforcement of getting to start every game and like, what really matters to me about this? And it was like the training for it really mattered, not the actual game. But yeah, played 3 seasons for the team.
Okay. And then alongside that, you were studying. It was like a pre-med. I think you said molecular biology is what your major was.
Yeah.
When was kind of the first time that you thought you might want to apply to med school or go down the path of studying medicine?
Yeah, my dad, my grandfather, my oldest brother, they were all physicians. My dad was, my grandfather was retired in those years, but my dad was very actively practicing at a academic university, doing tons of research, a lot of speaking engagements, is very, engaged in his work. And my oldest brother was in, he was probably in his residency training, around the time I was kind of going through high school, junior high school. And, I think because I was just certain traits that I had as a person, as well as this like knack for math and science and always getting good grades in those areas, it was kind of like fed to me like, oh, you're going to be such a great doctor, just like your dad. And, and so it was kind of there.
That environment that you grew up in.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed like the sciences, when I spent maybe a semester and a half in college, like exploring some other stuff. And then I was quick to be like, I just need to do a science degree that like, kind of allows me to, one, get all these prerequisites done for medical school. Should I want to do that? 2, these are things I'm good at anyway. And I had like a lot of interest. I think the most of my interest was in like physiology and nutrition early on. So I was like, well, molecular cell biology, I can take all of these, lower upper division courses that really align with stuff I'm into and I'm pretty good at. So I'll just do that. And MCB at Berkeley was like the harder biology major that, looked better on medical school applications.
Sure.
So I was doing all the things to align to potentially go to medical school. Yeah.
And so then as you're going through all of that, it sounds like you kind of grew up in this environment where that was expected, or that was kind of reinforced to you that you were going to apply to med school after college. But when it came time to start that process, kind of where was your head at? What were you thinking?
I think there were some signs, that were kind of early on that were telling me maybe this isn't my path. This isn't where I should be headed. I mean, just the rigorous process of like studying for and taking the MCAT was something that I had to pour a lot of like, I had to like protect my life. It was like a summer, before senior year where I didn't do anything. And, so once I got over all the hurdles and like I had the application was sort of right, and actually back up a second, I was also like in the absence of, well, what else do I do? I didn't really have, I don't think there were a lot of opportunities along the way where people were asking me like, hey, Marcus, what do you want to do? Like, and this is some options you have. And this is some, these are some things. It was, the intent to go to medical school and to apply, and even my like personal statement in my applications was painting a picture of me going to medical school, getting a degree, and then creating a new form of healthcare delivery. Like we're gonna open up a center where we're gonna have, fitness trainers, nutritionists, like mental health specialists, a physician. Maybe I would be that physician on board to kind of do holistic kind of health makeovers on people. And that was like what I wrote in my personal statement. And most people
had that vision like really early on before you even were applying to med school.
Yeah, I had that vision kind of budding up because I was getting I was just getting so much from the health and fitness experience in my own life. And then because that was what I was known for, like, yeah, I was like, people knew I did well in school, but they were like, oh, Marcus is fit and he watches what he eats and he knows how to train. Like, that was what I got a chance to actually help people with early on. Like, I didn't do internships where I was in the hospital and working like around, you know, patients and getting to experience that positive reinforcement. It was like people wanted to go to the gym with me. They wanted me to give them a workout. They wanted to know what I was eating. They wanted to know how to like make practical changes in their day-to-day life. And so that I wanted to pursue that, but there was no model in front of me in 2007. There wasn't a model of like, this is how you can go and do that and make a career out of it. 12 years ago, there were maybe there were a couple CrossFit gyms, but not many. It was still early.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So you made your whole application kind of with that vision in mind. And then what was it like going through the interview process and kind of application process, deciding where you wanted to go?
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard for me because I think everyone knows that's going through the application process. It's like, it's super competitive, and it is, if you just get into a medical school, it's like you just elated, right? Like I got in somewhere. And I was almost like approaching it like, I really need to get into this type of school because that's going to feed like this other part of me that needs to be nurtured. So I was from, the West Coast, went to school in California for undergrad. I was like, UCSF's my top choice. That's where my parents worked. I wanted to be close to home. Next up was like either Davis or like somewhere on the West Coast. Like I wanted to stay in California, and that meant a lot to me. And so when I interviewed at, I guess it was 2 or 3 California schools. UCSF was my first interview. I got waitlisted at all of them. Like I didn't get in, and it was like my heart was just like, it sank. It was like, oh,
which I feel like, even for me being from Michigan, like I think most people from Michigan don't even apply to California schools because they're like, oh, there's no way you're even going to get in. It just seems like such a difficult process.
Totally. And it was, and I remember having some of those interviews and feeling like, oh man, these people don't get, this person that's sitting across from me doesn't get my vision of what I see of myself. And so in the meantime, I interviewed at Baylor, Ohio State, and Wake Forest, and I got accepted to those schools. And I got several of those acceptances early, and I was like, I should be stoked about this. And meanwhile, I'm like holding out for a California school, like that's going to complete the vision and allow me to do this thing. And eventually it didn't come, and I had to make a decision. I chose Ohio State. And at that point is when I deferred for a year. So I was like, I kind of waited a year after undergrad to apply. And then I got my acceptance. I was like, I need to take another year. Like, this is me just sort of,
delaying the inevitable.
Delaying, yeah, exactly.
So what were you doing during that time, like during the year in between college and applying, and then in that year where you deferred?
I did some traveling, international stuff, like going through a lot of Southeast Asia travel. I think, what needed to have the headline of those 2 years was I needed to like figure out a little bit of who I was with the label of student athlete just sort of stripped away. And because I didn't even know, I was like, what am I, I think my senior year after the MCATs were over, I was pretty depressed. I was pretty depressed as a person. I was just like, I've been just working on this like hard, schedule for years, and for what? Like, where am I headed? I wasn't so psyched and set and stoked on the prospect of becoming a doctor in the traditional sense of what I had kind of grown up around. Like, I wasn't dying to be a radiologist like my dad. I wasn't drawn to any particular specialty or field out there. I love the idea of healthcare and healing, but I didn't have a model. So after school was over, I was like, okay, I need time to kind of discover who I am if I'm going to re-engage in this process, which is going to be tough, and come out the other end like with my core values intact. And so yeah, it was travel around the world. It was take a lot of I don't know another way to put it, but just like do a lot of like spiritual work and like 10 meditation and spiritual retreats and do inward stuff. And then, I coached a little soccer and tutored a bunch of students like in that time to make some money so I could pay for my travels, because I was like, I want to go to Asia for 3.5 months. And my parents were like, go ahead, pay for yourself. Like that's what we're paying for at this point. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's pretty amazing though, too, that you were at least in tune enough to take that time, because I think, at least from what I've seen, so many people go straight through, high school, undergrad, medical school, residency, and it's not until later in that process that they have that moment where they're saying, wait, what am I actually doing? And it's such a tough field, because unlike, most other people, when you graduate from college and then have to ask yourself, like, what kind of job do I want to get? What do I want to do? You don't really start having to ask yourself those questions until later on, because everything is sort of laid out for you. Like, you do the MCAT, then you apply, then you do med school, then you pick a residency, then you pick a fellowship, and then next thing you know, you're like almost 40 and you're just starting to live your life. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to have that introspection as they go through the process to really figure out why they're doing what they're doing, especially in a system today that is so designed against like physician happiness. Basically, there's so many factors that you're working against. So I think it was, and I've noticed, at least of my colleagues, those that took some time off before and really know why they're doing it, have been much more successful and like enjoyed the process much more.
Yeah. I think the analogy of like a high-speed train that's just moving and you're on this thing, and to stop the thing, you gotta it takes a lot of work and many miles and cities to actually slow down to get off. And I don't know why I had enough awareness, or I'm not even sure that it was people have said that to me. And even like my decision to leave medical school once I started, it was like, oh, I can't believe you had the awareness to do that. And I'm like, it wasn't like I just was like, I think I'm going to need to do this. And so I'm going to take this scheduled break. It was like at a breaking point in my life where I was like, if I don't do this, I might not survive, in any way that I could foresee being good. Yeah. So it came at like an expense for sure, and a cost and a lot of pain points. But yeah, I mean, and I also credit a lot of, having two supportive parents, but a mom that was very connected to me emotionally and was like, hey, like, you don't have to do something if it's not right for you. Like, no matter what, and not, had I had a mom that was more like, hey, you don't quit something, like,
right.
I may be a different story right now. Like, I don't know. Totally. Right.
It's so funny because my mom played a similar role. Like, I remember it was right around after my first year of med school. And that was the year that I wanted to train and compete at the games and do first year of med school, because I was like, I'm going to prove it that I can do both. It's going to be great. And I definitely got to a breaking point, and it was bad. And I remember it was one specific discussion I had with my mom on the phone where she said, you don't have to do any of this. Like, you could drop out of med school today. You could stop competing CrossFit today. We're going to love you just the same. Like, we just want you to be happy. And after she said that, it made me realize, take a step back and be like, yeah, I don't have to do any of this. And it made me really think about why I wanted to do it and connect with that bigger purpose. And then things started to get a lot easier and more comfortable. And I made some decisions about how I was going to balance those two things moving forward. But moms can come in really handy.
Totally. Well, and it was, I was very involved in the sport around that time as well. And, just watching your story and being like, is she doing this and medical school? I'm like, it was, having had that experience of, year one of medical school, it's pretty brutal. It's like it's a rough transition no matter what.
It is. So then sort of before you take this time off, you travel, you defer for a year, you do a lot of kind of soul searching. What were you thinking then when you went back to start med school? Were you thinking, okay, yes, I'm ready and this is what I want to do, or were you still having a lot of question marks in your mind?
I was like, I'm a totally different person than I was when I graduated college. It's been 2 years since I was in a class and I was, taking notes and, studying for exams. And that time off it is so important to me. And so I was like, okay, I'm a totally different person. No, this isn't going to be easy. And no, I'm not like thrilled to get back into the basic sciences and have to like redo everything. And, like I was excited for anatomy, which is our first block. But outside of that, I was like, biochemistry again and all this pharmacology. I was like, I'm not like, I'll just do it. I know how to do it and I'm good at doing it. I did it for a number of years. I guess the big question mark for me was like, am I going to be able to hold on to this feeling that I have about myself and the way I can sort of balance life a little bit? I was a relatively unbalanced student in college, right? It was like I studied to an excess, like I studied what most people bring to the first year of medical school that's required of them in terms of like mental focus and study. Like I was doing that, in undergrad. And I can only say that because I saw it, it was like, classmates of mine like, oh man, so much studying. And I was like, really? This is what like I did every day in college, which was way more than was required. So it was like, how am I going to be able to balance this? Am I going to be able to balance it? And, there was excitement for sure about like starting fresh in a new place and, being able, like asking myself like, okay, I'm leaving that old guy behind that was depressed in college because he had worked himself to the ground. I'm going to be this new person. And, so there was excitement. There was some questioning that was going on. And then, anatomy and that first block of school and meeting new classmates that were great, like was super fun and exciting. I was like, anatomy to me was like it. I was like, this is great. Like I'll do this all day. And then that started to just slowly change and transform over the months that followed, especially when winter hit in Ohio.
Yeah. I feel ya.
California kid wasn't ready for that so much.
That's tough. Oh man, I remember some of my classmates our first year that lived in other climates, and it was the first time they had ever seen snow before, and then like going outside to experience snow, and it was very fun. But but the winters get old very fast. Yeah. So then, you eventually came to this decision that, medical school is not the right path for you. Can you take us through sort of how you ultimately got to that decision and what that decision was like? You mentioned some of the support you had from your mom, but what that was like to share with your family and your friends.
Yeah. It was funny. I had a good friend of mine who from college, I met him studying for the MCAT. We were like study buddies in MCAT days, and we ended up at different schools, but we started at the same time. We both kind of deferred for different lengths. And so along the way, I was like, and he and I went on this spiritual retreat together for about a month in that time off.
Wow.
We were like really deeply bonded, and we, like I don't know. Not a lot of male friendships like end every conversation with like, I love you, but like that's the kind of level we were on. And so, and funny story about Ben was that he was at Tulane when like the year after
Oh.
Katrina, or like a few years after Katrina, and they had like a hurricane watch, and so like the city was like, you got to get out of here, and so they shut down school for
Wow.
like 2 weeks during we were both doing anatomy. So he came to Ohio State, stayed with me, and went to our anatomy lab and was in class with me for a couple of weeks. Just anyhow, but
That's cool.
Bringing it back to your question, it was like I had him along the way to kind of always be bouncing like kind of thoughts and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really just that first year where it kind of went from like, this is the excitement, and then it quickly started to fade. And then it was like, man, this is really hard. Like, and not just like the school part of it, but like feeling inspired and feeling connected to my purpose and the vision, the long-term vision. And even if it's going to be hard and there's going to be parts that suck and nobody really wants to go through, you know, these aspects of medical school, like there were so few things that were keeping me positive and motivated. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of this like slow decline where, you know, I'm outperforming everybody. I'm getting the best grades in the whole class. I'm mm-hmm. pushing myself like that's all I know how to do. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just like depressed, and I'm like, I don't like what I'm doing. And I'm communicating this to my parents and to Ben, and we're having these conversations, and it's kind of like, you know, year one is tough for everybody. It's not easy. I'm like, okay, am I just like everybody else? Like, is this what everyone else is feeling right now? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not going to quit in my first year. Definitely not. Like, I have to make it through, you know, and getting through the last 2 months of winter was like the worst, you know, lots of like phone calls in mm-hmm. the hallway, in the stairwell, at, you know, the library, like crying to my mom and my dad, and getting like talked off the ledge. And and then, you know, spring kind of came and the year was almost over, and Ben and I had some summer plans. We were going to go to Spain together. And so I was like, okay, nice. I'm going to make it, you know, and then I was going to get out of this like terrible apartment I was in, found a new great place to live for year 2. And so like, okay, this is all getting better. And, mm-hmm. and that summer away, so the summer before we came back for a second year, I tried to like recharge myself and get ready and prepared. And, but it was still like, I still had doubts. And then I came back and we started our first like neuro block or something like that. And I literally just couldn't pick up a book. Like I couldn't, mm-hmm. There's no way I couldn't even force it. And, mm-hmm. So yeah, it really happened slowly and gradually, but it was this like, you know, doing my best to acknowledge that these are challenges that a lot of people go through. And how do I separate like what most people are feeling from what I'm feeling, and what's different and what's like not mm-hmm. right about this? And who are my core people that I get to speak to about that? Because I didn't have classmates that I felt confident to share that with. I mean, mm-hmm. I had friends that when I told them the news, like, you know, that I'm leaving, they were like, what? That's a terrible idea. You know, I'm like, well, this isn't an idea. Like, I'm actually, like, I already spoke to the dean. Like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting, like you say, to try to separate, you know, what's a normal, like, going through a challenging experience, and like, how far do we push ourselves for growth and to like reach a goal, versus what is our body and our mind telling us it's like, this is not right for us, you know?
Yeah.
And I think eventually, like you said, like you do reach a point where you can't ignore it anymore. And it becomes like, you figure it out because your body and your mind will kind of tell you. And I had a sort of a similar experience, after it was during my second year where it was during my first year. This was like pre my mom having that talk with me that, which I've talked about before, but I was pretty depressed as well. And I think a lot of it was because of moving. My coach was living in a different place. I was trying to compete in do all this stuff, and I had no life because I was just either studying or working out, and I hadn't really done as well. Like the games the year before hadn't really gone the way that I had planned, and I had a lot of like grief in the like deaths in the family grief that I hadn't really dealt with. I was just kind of pushing away because I was doing all these other things. And it finally got to a point where like I couldn't ignore it anymore, where I would just be crying for no reason, like walking to my car after school and like could not stop from crying. And it gets to the point where you're like, okay, I got to do something. I can't live like this. There's clearly something bigger going on. And so, you know, I always wish that there's a way. I think we get better with experience about being able to decipher that earlier on before it gets that bad. But I think eventually, you know, our kind of path and our purpose becomes clear. But for me, it was mainly like, which is, I think, a lot of what you have expressed. It was mainly connecting with my purpose, like really trying to figure out, why are we here? What are we, you know, what is the purpose that we're here on this earth? And then once you connect with that, everything gets easier in the path, like whatever path that takes. Even if there's challenges, it's worth it because you know you're working towards that like bigger purpose and goal. Yeah.
Well, and it's, because now I'm a fitness coach, you know, and I have been for 10 years. And that's that's the conversation that we lead in with many clients. And, you know, what's the purpose? Like, or what's your life priority? You know, what is the number one thing for you always? And, and then just helping people uncover that. And it's often not until they're like stressed to the limits that they can really hone in on that. And that's been a recurring lesson for me from college through medical school to competing in the sport of fitness to, you know, starting a family and getting married and all the big events. It's like stressing that stuff to the limits is what has helped me gain clarity. And it's funny because like I, as a coach, I've had to learn this over time too. It's like, I want to help people get there before they have to experience pain of some sort. I want you to I might see it coming. I'm like, oh, this is going to end badly for them. Like, let me try and steer them. And then it's almost like really maybe the job of the coach is to just be there when it happens. You know, like mom there right when it happened to be like, okay, I've seen it coming and here you are at the breaking point. And now is when you need to hear the right advice or the timely advice. And that's kind of, you know, we're not trying to like drive our clients into the stress that makes them recognize what they're up against and realize their purpose. You know, we want to kind of steer them away from that, but it's in some cases it's inevitable. And, you know, I have a client right now who I'm thinking of who, probably won't be listening to this podcast, but if he does, like he probably would agree. It's like he's put there's a lot of stuff in his life that's kind of driving him into a deep stress point. And in our last conversation, I said, hey, like we need to keep talking about this because I want when the day comes, and it may come, where this turns into something that you can't just tolerate anymore. It starts to negatively like. We'll be ready to have like, you know, the conversation of how we're going to address it. But it's wild.
It's so funny too, just like you said, the parallels between, being that coach and then in, you know, where I am now in family medicine, it's whether it's behavior change, whether it's trying to figure out what drives people, which is so important for making that behavior change. It can be frustrating when people aren't ready yet or they're not to that point. And part of the job, like you said, is just being there and so that they know that you're there for them when they get to that point when they are ready to change. But I think the purpose conversation is huge. And it's something that I've been lucky that I have a lot of faculty that really emphasize that to us in our training. And actually the podcast, which will be released right before yours with Dr. Wayne Jonas, he's really big on that. And he has this whole inventory about asking every patient, what do you want your health for? What's most important to you? And really connecting with that, because whether it's someone who's dealing with chronic pain or diabetes or metabolic disease, if you can't connect the changes they need to make to their purpose or what drives them, then there's, very little likelihood that they're actually going to put in the work to do it. And I think it's true for all of us.
I love that just the language there, and I'm gonna steal that. It's like, what do you want your fitness for? Like, that's
exactly.
Like, I'm here, I want to get fit. It's like, but what do you want that for? Like, what are you going to use it, and where? Yeah, that's great.
And it's so important nowadays too, where the emphasis really is we're trying to get the average person to really figure out that question. It's not just so I can compete,
right?
In the CrossFit Games or at regionals or whatever, but there should be hopefully some other underlying purpose underneath that. So yeah, I love that. And I think it's an important question for all of us to answer for ourselves, and it will change with different stages of our life cycle too.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about your CrossFit journey, because we haven't even really mentioned it so far. But
sure.
When, along this timeline, when did you first get into CrossFit?
It was before medical school, so I kind of dabbled a little bit in that 2-year gap window. It was, and me dabbling was like, San Francisco CrossFit was an affiliate at the time. I got exposed to them by a friend, like, hey, come and work out here with me. Took some classes. I wasn't like a full blown member because it was a little bit of a drive from where I live, but I would go and take classes from Kelly Starrett and Adrienne Bosman and, just learn some stuff from them. And caught the bug. And so I just sort of lived on CrossFit.com for a while, like not just doing main site workouts, but more like exploring every journal video that was there, every exercise demonstration, everything, consuming it all. And so that was kind of my introduction. But then I traveled for 3 or 4 months it was like 4 months in Southeast Asia. So I kept my fitness up doing like my variations of stuff I'd done in the past, along with a little, like some CrossFit WODs that I could do with like my body weight burpees, and did so many burpees in Vietnam. It's ridiculous. But, and then went to school, and I immediately was like, okay, where's the CrossFit gym? Oh, CrossFit Gahanna. Okay. That's like that was Rogue Fitness back then. And it was a bit of a drive, like now Columbus has like all these boxes right by campus. We're 0 when I was there. So I literally had to drive like 30, 35 minutes, which I didn't see as a possibility.
No.
That was 35 minutes each way. And I'm like, I got to study. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to, I'm going to work out at the school gym, which was great. But I was doing like, main site workouts or workouts I'd seen. I was just kind of pulling stuff. And, I remember the gym had an indoor track upstairs, and then they had rowers on the second level, and then the squat racks and all the weights were on the bottom level. So I might do a workout where I was like literally going up flights of stairs, like rowing, and then going back down to the squat rack and doing thrusters, and but sort of just figuring out how to stay connected to that, and just keeping a close eye on CrossFit in all, like, not just workouts and the competition stuff, but like the affiliates and the growth of that. And it was like the thing that if I could look at my browser history back then, it was like Wikipedia for basically my medical education, because that's like how we all taught ourselves. It was like we were like living off of that. And and CrossFit websites and affiliate pages. And if I needed a break from studying, I was just like, what's going on with CrossFit these days? What's happening in the competitive world? Like, and how can I, wow, like, oh, there's a new affiliate that just opened up in my home county. And like, could I go there over the breaks? And so I kind of started that way.
And then when you decided that you were going to stop medical school, did you have, like, at that point, did you have any idea of what you wanted to do, or did you just take some time and kind of try to figure that out?
I didn't know what I was going to do, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Like,
you still had the vision.
I still had a vision. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
But it had gotten so bad that I was like, I might go to culinary school and just totally flip directions. Like I need to do something that is so disconnected from this. Like that was
where you were at.
But then I was like, okay, I'll move home and maybe and technically I took a leave of absence, like a 1-year leave of absence. I had an opportunity to go back if I needed to. They gave me that option. I didn't really, I was like, I got a year to figure out what I'm doing so that I don't have to exercise this option because it doesn't look good to me.
Okay.
But it was there. So yeah, going home, it was like, just need to chill for a minute, get into some like therapy so that I could like work on myself and figure out what's happening. You know, job postings, like research, you know, lab, jobs that, you know, I could take my undergraduate degree and kind of plug myself into a different system. I looked at them, but I know I was so uninspired to do it that I didn't actually ever look deeper. Although I was looking at like, are there any exercise science labs or like departments that I could get into that might be like that kind of was a flicker of like, okay, maybe I could kind of take this molecular cell biology thing into a direction that I'm into. But really it was like, I remember like my first couple weeks home, me on my bike, riding through my hometown and looking at like, oh, I could put a box there. Oh, I could open up a box there. Like it was like CrossFit gym in my mind. Yeah, it's totally there. And I also was like, the number one thing I need to do when I'm home is I need to go and join an affiliate, and I need to just I need to use the affiliate and the box and the culture to heal me. I need to that's what I'm going to do. And so I did that. And, you know, it was like maybe a month in, they're like, hey, you want to coach? And I was like, no, like I just need this for myself. And, but then I couldn't hold out for very long because I was like, yeah, actually, I really want to coach. I actually really want to, you know, I really want to do this thing. And, so that was kind of like, I was going to go all in on getting as much into the fitness culture as I could, in that year. And, whatever it took to make that happen. I mean, I took a part-time job as like a barista, and I was making lattes every day, like opening at 5 a.m. and then make it, you know, it was a 4-hour shift until 9, and I would go coach the 9:30 class, and then I would, you know, coach in the afternoon. I'd work out in the day, and it was like I was just doing that because I wanted to see how far I could take that in a short amount of time to give myself like at least some confidence of like, okay, this is what I need to do. Yeah.
And then when did competing in CrossFit start to become something that you were interested in?
I mean, I think I was interested in it just from like the perspective of like, you know, I was following all the journal videos from early on. Like I knew who Chris Spieler was. I knew OPT. I knew, you know, the names that were there. Just like Jason Khalipa's name popping up, and, you know, Josh Everett, and kind of idolizing that group and being like, man, they're really fit and I want to do this. And, you know, but not like, oh, I can't wait to compete against them. Like, I want to get out there and show my stuff. It was sort of like they're way up here, and I'm like, I knew I was good at some of the things that I was doing because I was, you know, the best in my affiliate. And, but then they had like an affiliate team at my gym that had been to the games prior to me even showing up in 2009. And so they're like, oh, do you want to be on our team? And I was like, oh, okay, like, sure, you know, and then in that first year we made the games, like 2010, the first year it was at the Home Depot Center. And I think I just kind of like, you know, you get pulled into the storm. It's like you do one, and then like a couple months later, you're like training and prepping for the next open. Yeah, it's just going. And so I kind of got into it, and I was like, I definitely still had that athlete in me that wanted to, you know, push himself within fitness. And I saw CrossFit from the beginning as like this great challenge to myself. Like, oh my gosh, like how do I get better at these things? So, you know, having the competition there as like something to keep motivating that was something that I enjoyed. But I don't, it all kind of happened by accident. I mean, I was definitely there in the affiliate with this purpose of like, how do I become a professional in this industry?
Mm-hmm.
And the competing was sort of just like happening at the same time. Yeah.
Well, it's lucky in that sense that, you know, how many people want to become a professional industry or want to become a coach and are working out as hard as they can, but they don't happen to make the game or regionals or anything else. So
Right. I feel like the timing was really amazing. I mean, those first couple of years, I was surrounded by these other good athletes. We had this like pretty cool collection of people that were able to make back to back games as an affiliate, and we improved our placements and, you know, finished that was back when they had like the final workout that only 6 teams got to go to, and we made it to the final workout.
Oh, cool.
But so that process, those early years, you know, I don't want to say that it was easy to make the games, but like it was definitely easier. And, but it fueled that, okay, now I really want to go and like become an individual athlete in the sport and see what I'm made of. Can I hang with these guys? And that was a big switch in mentality for sure.
Yeah. And what were those years like then, as you were training and competing as an individual at the games?
They were interesting. I mean, I opened up my own affiliate I partnered with, so I became a member at this box called TJ's Gym. They had 2 other locations in the area, looking to open up a 3rd location, or I guess it was the 4th location. And I was like, it was my hometown. It was where I grew up. I was like, I want to, that's where I want to be, you know, a business owner and a gym owner someday. And so we partnered, and that became kind of my place to run. And that was like essentially in the last year of team competition. So spent a lot of time getting that business like up and running, and it was doing really well. Had some good people in place to help support the time and like the coaching of, you know, classes. And so as I moved into like getting more and more pulled into this individual, you know, competition journey, like I was like, my responsibilities at the gym were kind of like, I didn't need to do as much. I had more people working there, like covering classes, and I could be the presence at the gym and then train in the off hours. And, but there was a lot going on. It was like coaching a lot, doing a lot of personal training hours, competing, you know, training a lot of hours in the day for myself. But I was like 7 years old, and I felt like I was at my best, and I was just going crushing it. So, and the first 2 years of competing were super hard on my body, just because I was playing a lot of catch up in the world of aerobic fitness. I mean, I was a goalkeeper in college, and so to like learn how to basically do CrossFit aerobically meant I had to put in a lot of hours and do a lot of different stuff that just didn't feel like, I mean, I had good mechanics for it, but, you know, I was always dealing with back pain and you name it. Like it was just, it was brutal. And I feel like I snuck in the first year. Like 2013 was the year that they were still like grandfathering in old champions. So Jason was in my region, and he had won previously. So his qualifying spot didn't count. So they took the 4th qualifying spot at the region, and I was the 4th. You know, it was like, you know, Jason, Neil Maddox, Garrett Fisher, and then me and Pat Barber were like battling it out for this other spot. And the gap between us and them was huge. So it was like, we really didn't. So I beat him out and got this, you know, invitation to go. And it was exciting, but that sparked me being like, okay, the next time I do this, there's going to be no doubt. Like I either made it or I didn't. Like I'm not going to be this fringe person. Which meant I leveled up my training and took it more seriously. And it's like, again, it's just pulling you further in. It's like,
So then 2014, you competed again as an individual. We were both at this games that year. And I don't know how our paths didn't really ever cross prior, but anyways, I think that was the only year that we were both there individually.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think they do a good job of separating the men and the women. It's like
They do.
we're on
There's a lot
different
going
schedules.
on. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. 2014 competed at the games, and had a better showing, but still not like, something that I was like super proud of. And then 15, I took the year off because my mom got diagnosed with lymphoma in October of that year, and it was super, super aggressive, advanced, and it was just really like a scary few months. And I just like the emotional investment of like trying to prep for the open and all that. Like I just can't do it. So, so I took that year off, and she went through treatment, and she had amazing care, and she got into remission, and which was remarkable, and like opened up just the possibility of me like, okay, I'm gonna get back into the sport. And in 2016, I decided to compete again, and like at regionals that year was this like on Saturday of regionals, we celebrated my mom's 1 year, 1 year, cancer-free remission. My grandfather passed away, her dad, and it was the day that you had to do the wall ball pull up workout right into pistols and power cleans, and then the other event was like deadlifts and running and GHD sit-ups, which was going to be by far like the hardest day for me, and I just was getting like stumped. So it was like physical pain, emotional excitement, my mom, and then emotional pain from my grandfather. And it was just like this crazy day, and that whole weekend was wild for me. But it was, I qualified in one of the bigger regions that it was the first time competing in one of like the combined regions, California. And that ended up being just my, this great conclusion to my individual competing career. It was a special year.
Definitely. And you had a good showing at the games. And then you said that was the sort of the conclusion of your individual career at the games. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, 2016, had sold my business, or basically exited my partnership. I didn't align anymore with the like core values with my partners, and I wanted something that they didn't want, and they wanted something that I didn't want. And so I needed to create, a different path for myself. So here I was having to say goodbye to this community that I'd really helped build in my hometown, and having like a clause within the, agreement where it was like, you can't open up another business nearby, and you have to, there's non-competes. And so that happened, had this big, games, and I was also playing grid at the time, which was like, so that was like an additional 2 months after the CrossFit Games season of like hard competing and pain and torture. And so wrapping up that year was like the emotional, loss of the gym, the physical competition season, having to navigate a new business. I had to start my business from scratch again. Had gotten engaged, had gotten married earlier that year, and now my wife and I were pregnant. So I had a baby coming early the next year, and 2017 was when she was born. And so, and I was just like a wreck. My body was just beat up. Yeah. And so I made this commitment to myself, like I gotta get this business like secured. 2, I got to get my body healthy again, because I don't even feel like doing anything. Like, I still want to be in fitness, but I mean, I couldn't lift my arms over my head. My knee was feeling like totally jacked from grid and CrossFit, the whole combination of the year. And so like, I didn't make any like decisions, but I'm like, I don't think I have it. I mean, I was like, I don't think I have another year of doing this. As much as it was amazing and fun, like, and I enjoyed it, I'm not sure I can make it happen again. And, I went through the rest of that winter, got healthy, got my energy back, was training competitively. I was like, okay, I'm going to do the open, or I'm going to prep for the open, but then the baby's going to be born right around that time. So, I'm not going to make any commitments. And then, and then Noah was born on a Saturday, and the open announcement was the following Wednesday. And I don't think I slept for like 7 days, after she was born, like just up all night with her and figuring out like, breastfeeding and supporting my wife through that and doing all kinds of, I literally was up, every hour for, 7 days straight. And, I did that first 17.1 and got a decent score, but literally just like died trying to get a qualifying score. And I finished the workout, laid on the ground for 10 minutes, like not feeling right, and got up, and one of my coworkers, one of my coaches at my gym just reminded me, he's like, I remember when you stood up from that, you looked at me and you just said, not good enough. And I think I knew in that moment, I was like, it's over. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not going to happen. And it wasn't just that I couldn't perform well enough, because I could have qualified. And actually that year I probably might have been able to sneak through regionals, because it was kind of a weird year in California. But just like I wasn't able to bring what I remember bringing to it at all. And that just was like, there's other things that need to take precedence right now. And my daughter, and certainly our new child. And that was like, in hindsight, I'm like, why did I even think there was a possibility of me doing this? Like, that's not me as a person. I can't juggle those two things for sure. But it was a special, opportunity to, really engage in those first 6 to 12 months of her life and not be pulled away by the stress of the open and regionals and then whatever came after that, if there was anything after that.
Yeah. And I think what you said is important, that you could have done it physically, but at what cost? The emotional cost of being pulled away, or having to be selfish in those ways for your training when you have a new daughter, or trying to spend time with your family. I think in a lot of ways that people don't see that aspect of competing at a high level, and how much goes into it from a mental perspective of just every single decision you make is kind of around making sure that you're prepared to compete, whether it's sleep, whether it's meal prep, whether it's not going out with your friends late at night, or whatever it is, the toll that can take year after year of doing that. And I think for me, it's something that I didn't realize really how much stress I had on a baseline level until it wasn't there anymore. And then you realize, wow, I can start to do all these things for other people and not have to worry about my own training. It's a different mindset.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's what's probably made it hard for me to know if there's going to be a time for me to get back into competing ever. It's like I keep flirting with the idea. I keep, it calls to me for sure. Like, especially since I'll be 35 this year, and there's a whole kind of opportunity in front of me. But it's also like, even then, it's like, what's it gonna add, and what might it take away? And having had the chance to just experience what it's like to not be thinking every moment about that, and what it's done to enrich my relationship to my wife and allow us to schedule our year in a way that's like a little bit more free, like taking vacations, like we're planning a trip I'm already thinking, okay, if I do the open in October, then I'm not going to travel anytime between like middle of August and the open. But I'm like, but there might be a chance for my wife and I to go to this cool place. Like, I don't miss that, and it is something that I think by and large, most people that are competing at a high level of any sport, but in particular, like fitness, CrossFit, it's a lot of, emotional and mental energy that gets put onto you and to yourself and to the sport. And, I'm always in awe of people that seem to not have that issue. They can just, balance that stuff. And I'm like, can I be like that person who just like has 3 kids and like is like competing like 5 times a year and is not like juggling it all so well? But I think they're usually the exceptions to the rule, and that, you know, we kind of, my experience is that I've been in the same boat as most people, and that it's just hard. And
well, and it's kind of, you know, you have everyone who's competed at a high level has that personality, and that if you're going to do something, you want to put 100% into it, right? You don't want to show up to a competition feeling like you haven't done everything you could to prepare. And so the thought of, like, maybe you could take vacation and spend time with your family and still be able to qualify or compete. But it's that uncertainty of, you know, can I do that and then show up feeling like I didn't do everything I could to or to prepare, and is that still going to be enjoyable for me? I think it's you know, it's can you be okay with that?
Yeah. Well, and I think my early experiences in the sport, like the early years of competing, taught me what it feels like to show up unprepared. And I'm like, I don't ever want to go back to that. like 2010 sectionals coming in and just getting like just annihilated by, like, you know, because I just wasn't ready and I was like in over my head kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that by prepping the way I used to prep for tests in medical school.
Right.
It's like, I'm going to know everything. There's no question. There's no, you know, and the moment, and then when the opportunity to prepare in that way was gone, it made me question, like, I don't think I should do this, you know, because that was really, unlike medical school, like the preparation for exams was not the part that I loved by any means. But in fitness, preparation for competition and preparation for the season was what I loved. I love that so much more than competing. I mean, I also admire people in the sport that are like, I just live for competition. I can't wait to get out there. Like, I hear like when Annie talks, she's like, I just want to be on the, I'm like, I was the opposite. I was like, let me get out of the competition floor. Like, I don't ever want to
be over.
Like, is it, we have to go to regionals now? No, like, you know, I was the opposite. I was like, let's just train more because it's so much less stressful.
Yes. And so I admire people, like you said, like Annie and Katrin and Sam Briggs, that people have been doing it for so long and just still seem to bring that same energy and love for training and competing. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's so special.
Okay, so now you said you started, you know, your business as well. Can you talk a little bit about that, kind of where this is Revival Strength, correct?
Yeah.
And kind of where the concept for that came from and what your goals were when you started that business.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to my CrossFit gym and my partnership and me speaking a little bit about the divergence in core values. I think because I had such a positive and fruitful experience with individual coaching through my CrossFit career as a competitor, and then also having a lot of personal training clients and then like private, like one-to-one individual coaching clients at the same time as the CrossFit gym was the group class thing was running. I started to just see a lot of value in that model of like doing things more personalized for people and less of the one size fits all. It's just get people into a group. I you know, in hindsight and still to this day, like I see all the value in what I was able to do in group fitness and what group fitness still offers people. But at the time, it was very much like, I want to explore what it's like to create a fitness business out of more of a one-to-one connection with people and less of a, you know, a 1-to-20 connection. And how do I make that work? And then the other part that was motivating for me was that, you know, I was in the gym and I was like surrounded by other young coaches that were around my age. Cause like that was it. It was like most CrossFit gyms were like, you know, an owner and then these young coaches that are like doing the classes and doing the work. And, I'm like, fitness is going to be my career. Yeah. And then, but just seeing other people my age or a little bit younger, just like having to go find other jobs or not being able to sustain in coaching and just burning out and feeling like, whoa, like these are all my friends. These are the people that I like really want to be around and want to spend time with. And I want to have colleagues like my dad and my mom had for 30 years. Yeah. But at this rate, I haven't had a person I've worked side by side with for more than like 18 months without them leaving. So I'm like, that's kind of messed up. Like, what's going on there? Why is that happening? So like, how do I want to explore like how to answer these two questions. How do I get people to hang around longer that want to do this and really are maybe good at it? So maybe a different model that could help those coaches, and then try to see what personalized fitness can look like a little bit more so than group design. And so those were sort of the things that I founded Revival Strength on. And I was doing a lot of online coaching, individual online coaching for mostly people that were like competitive in the sport, because that was what I was doing and that's what they saw and that's what I was talking about a lot. But I also knew that there was a place for this type of fitness for just general population clients. And so I stuck to that. And there was like about 12 months where I was sort of in an agreement to not open up a facility. So I was really kind of limited to just being a virtual coach to people. I did some personal training, like in a small studio that I had built out, but so that was kind of how things began. And then really, those are still very present within Revival Strength to this day. I mean, we coach over 300 clients that are all over the world, some local in Marin County that come to our facility, and they do personalized fitness programs, in a group environment. Some people that are just getting remote coaching from us that are different countries, different parts of the U.S. And then along the way, there was sort of like a style to my training and my coaching and the way I talked about it on social media that was unique enough, unique enough to catch people's attention. And it's definitely like this collection of my experiences over the years of, how do I train to feel good and heal myself from stressful times? And then of course, how do I train to be like elite, and then what's sport, what's health, what's the middle ground? And I kind of coined this like thing about functional bodybuilding early on in 2017. And it's kind of been this thing that's I've worked hard to message about it and let it kind of attach to our brand. And now that's a big part of what Revival Strength stands for, is putting out education and training experiences for people to learn what that way of training is, what that style of training can look like. And, I have these like online group training programs that people can participate in, which is interesting because it was like, that was not what the business was founded upon. It was founded upon more like a one-to-one, experience. But I just saw the need and the value of giving people an experience of a new style of training, something that was less about like become the elite and more about like train in a way that connects with the things you love about that, but allow you to maybe do it longer and do it while also juggling, family life and business and all the things I was going through in my own life. So in a nutshell, it's, an individual coaching business that's designed to try and create careers for coaches that can really last a long time. And then delivering education around, using functional bodybuilding in a way that can support athletes, thinking athletes, coaches, personal trainers, group fitness facilities. I mean, it's touched, I think, a lot of different areas in the fitness community.
Definitely. And so can you explain what it would be the difference, or what is the difference between like what you would think of as a traditional CrossFit style workout, or what you would get in a normal group class in an affiliate, and what the distinction is with functional bodybuilding and kind of the purpose behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's hard to really like generalize about what people are going to get in a typical box, because at this point there's so much variation out there, and there's so many people that are implementing principles of functional bodybuilding. Maybe they're calling it something else, but there's similarities there.
Yeah.
They may have gotten it from me, or they may have gotten it from another source. But in the original kind of model of, CrossFit, it was, high intensity, constantly varied high intensity functional movements, right? And the whiteboard was a test. It was like, go in and test yourself. Mm-hmm. What's the best that you can do in this constantly changing environment of movement, load, time duration, task versus time priority, etc. And so I look at that as like, that's high intensity testing fitness, like on a regular basis, with the intent to try and over time let that improve people's health characteristics, versus more of like a, looking at other fitness methods and models over the years where there was, periodization built into every aspect of training, right? Like CrossFit was sort of the antithesis of periodization versus, whereas most powerlifting programs or endurance programs or, gymnastics, there's periodization built into those in history of fitness. And then also seeing that, most people that train for the sport of fitness were not doing this model. They were actually periodizing in most everything that they were doing, and recognizing that periodization had this really valuable quality to it, where you build in control, and through periods of time of people's training, control being like, we're not going to go to our max. We're going to hold back a little bit because we want to be ready to go to our max at a specific time. And that in that kind of sweet spot of like not being lazy, but not going to our max and having this control is where people they can see great results, and they can avoid some of the drawbacks that may come from being up at the top, right? Like pushing the max.
Right.
And so that is kind of like, well, that's what I believe in for my clients and for the people I train for myself. And when you put control points into training, you start to implement things that wouldn't have shown up on .com early on, right? .com was 5-5-5-5-5 back squat. It was 3 rounds for time. It was a chipper. It was run 5K at your best time possible, right? There's no go at 60%, go at 70%. There's no tempo associated with the lift. There's no rest period attached to intervals. There's no, aside from like a Tabata, but even still, that's a test. So it's like, okay, well, how do we implement control points? This is how we do it. We prescribe tempo to resistance training. We implement, rest periods within some of our conditioning. We also expand the movement library a lot outside of like the 9 fundamental movements of CrossFit, and there are accessory movements that go with it, box jump, burpee, etc. Like we're going to really expand that library of exercise selection to get people to move in unique patterns that don't produce a lot of power and are not very measurable, but they're still effective. Like doing a rear foot elevated split squat or doing a landmine rotational press. These are great tools, but it's hard to like prescribe a 21-15-9 of Bulgarian split squats and landmine rotational presses, so it didn't show up there.
Right.
And then lastly, it's like within conditioning, and I think that's the area where most people find it difficult to learn how to implement control. Using exercise selection to really make sure that our clients are doing movements at levels of fatigue that won't put them at risk. So rather than let's say a 20-minute AMRAP of burpees, thrusters, and kipping pull-ups, okay, versus 20-minute AMRAP of push a heavy sled, do a farmer's carry, and do some step ups.
Yeah.
Right. So the skill level, the requirement, the complexity of those movements, the margin for error, vastly different. And of course, recognizing like who the client is and seeing that most of the clients that we're dealing with in these environments that are general population that want to look good, feel good, they want to enrich their life, not take away from it. They're probably more in the spectrum of I need to push a sled, do some step ups, and whatever the other one I said, farmer's carry, right? And that they actually don't even have the requisite strength or the skill capacity to do 70 burpees, 70 thrusters, and 70 kipping chin-ups in the 20-minute time span. Maybe they don't even have like the strength to do one of those reps correctly or with great, mechanics and, efficiency. So that was a super long-winded answer, but it's like, that's kind of where I've gravitated towards. And so I had to that's what I was speaking about. And that's what I was showcasing, not only within my games training, but then the subsequent training that came after it, where I was healing my body from a tough road that I had been on. And people saw that. And you found,
that was helping you to heal some of your injuries and to be, kind of heal from the intense training that you had been doing before the games.
Yeah. I mean, we're so resilient as people that we can deal with a lot of stuff. And if you pull back on the intensity and you give your body a chance to heal, we're also remarkable healers. You give yourself the right ingredients, we'll heal from a lot. And I had to go through that experience firsthand, and people watched me go through that experience, and they're like, Marcus, what are you doing? I want to try that. What's that thing? And so I had to give it a name. I intentionally gave it a name to let it create an identity. And now it's like a couple years into it. It's like there's a very, clear look and feel to doing functional bodybuilding workouts that people that do our program and they go to a Globo gym or they go to their box and they're doing their workout, someone will come up to them inevitably and be like, oh, you're doing functional bodybuilding. Like they just see it. They know it when they see it. It's not like, what's that? Or like, they get the what's that, but they definitely don't get like, oh, you're doing CrossFit. Because it has too many things that like limit the amount of high intensity that you can actually execute. So yeah.
And then how often do you do high intensity pieces or more traditional type workouts? Or do you do like test benchmark workouts or things like that?
Yeah, and I try and be really like outspoken about this now too, is because I don't want to get lumped into like, we're always on cruise control with our coaching with our clients. I had a consult with a woman this morning who's like, well, is there still room for any of that high intensity? And I'm like, absolutely, but you got to tell me that you're doing all the right things on your end to kind of earn the intensity. You got to earn intensity, in my opinion. I don't think intensity is actually, I strongly disagree with the notion that intensity is the thing that's going to fix all your problems if your problems are rooted in having too much intensity in the other aspects of your life. If you're stressed out to the max, if you eat a crap diet, if you do all these things that are like elevating your stress load, and then you're like, well, let me go do this mega stressful workout, that's going to totally balance me. That's not the message that we're speaking. It's like, nope. So I personally do, 1 to 2 workouts, like, timed workouts a week that like, I'm going to go for it. And I feel it for sure. And I'm less able to engage with my daughters that evening at dinner, like I'm a little more tired. And, some of my clients who are still young, some of our businesses clients that are still young and want to compete and they don't have a lot of stress on their plate, like they might be doing more than that. Some of our general population clients that come in, they might not do any, like they might just be doing, like variations of cardio that are moderate intensity, and they might be doing resistance training and then trying to clean up their diet and clean up their, their sleep patterns. And that's what's best for them. So it's really, that's the part that I always knew had to be individualized. Yeah, I can have 10 people in the room all doing back squats or some squat like at the same time. But this person's ready to go heavy in a back squat, and this person needs to be doing like wall sits. Or I can have 10 people doing, airdyne, but only 2 people can really tolerate doing sprints on that airdyne right now. 5 of them need to be doing 85% effort. And then the other 2 need to just literally be like gently pedaling and getting off every couple minutes to go do a plank. And that's what's best for them. So it's that variable that really needs to be, ratcheted up and down depending upon what we evaluate in that client's life, all the factors.
Yeah. And I love that, looking at what's going on in a person's whole life, because often that, things that we talk about when we talk about nutrition, but I think it's not talked about enough in terms of generally the type of people that are attracted to walking into a CrossFit affiliate are people who are living high intensity lifestyles outside the gym. And exercise, people often think of as their stress relief, but if the exercise is very high intensity, and exercise itself is a stress on the body, and so we need to then create, if we're not able to create other areas where we can offload that and get into more of a relaxation mode, then over time that's just added to the whole picture of overstressing of the system. And I think, we certainly see that. I mean, we see that in ourselves. I see even like you look at the high level athletes who we just talked about, who've been doing this for a long time, they're able to do it because that's all they're doing. And when they're not training, they are relaxing. And that time, like helping your body relax, is equally as valuable, even if it seems like you're, not being productive or wasting time or whatever. Super important to recover from these type of workouts.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a professional athlete, which is what the sport looks like now, it's like, to think, I always make this joke. I'm like, do you think LeBron James has like a side gig that he's like busting his ass 30 hours a week for?
Coaching basketball for like, for like 4 hours every day. He's doing one-on-one session
with a basketball, like in the youth basketball program nearby. Like, no way, and not that our sport is there anywhere close to that yet in terms of like the money that can be made and the the eyes on it, but it's no less difficult physically and emotionally and mentally. So yeah, it's the stress bucket conversation with clients is something we have early on to let them understand and appreciate that physical stress, emotional stress, and mental stress are, you have these 3 pools and they're all connected. And if you're filling up 2 of them, or you're filling up your physical bucket with bad food and poor sleep, then remember, if we're going to add in physical stress from training, we're making the situation worse. And there's certain physical training that helps to release that, and that is sustainable aerobic work or resistance training. When you start to get into lactic training or threshold training, that's when it starts to fill the bucket up as opposed to release it. And that's a hard one for people to understand and appreciate, because they're like, but I feel so good after a hard workout. And I'm like, yeah, it's because you just like turned on all these hormones in your body that are there to like make you feel alive. Like you got adrenaline, you got catecholamines flying through your blood, and it's like hitting all these receptors, and you're like, oh, I'm alive. It's like, yeah. And the what comes after that, it's compounding this problem.
Yeah.
And it's a lesson that I've been taught for years from my mentors. And I'm so acutely aware of it now at this stage in my life when I have these other responsibilities and things that I want to show up and be present for. It's like I mentioned, like I'll give myself a couple of those tough workouts, and even then I know when to like pull back. But as an example, like 3 weeks ago, my coach was in town and he gave me a workout, like a testing workout to kind of see where my fitness was at. And he's watching me, which as any athlete knows, like it levels up your intensity. He's just sitting there watching. And I just, I went to that dark place. It hadn't been there quite some time. And I think I, started to be like maybe TMI for the group, but like, I think my digestion was for the next 3 days, like didn't have a normal bowel movement. I didn't sleep well that night. And I was just like, I think I got sick the next week, and I was like, okay, so that's what something like that can do to me, who generally takes pretty good care of my stuff outside of the gym. But I really pushed it. And so, yeah, it's like the give and take of that. Where is it worth it, and where is it not?
Right. And on that note, what are some of the things that you do outside the gym to try to balance that? And I know now, like you said, you're balancing business, family, all of these other things. What are some of the constants that you, or like non-negotiable things that you try to do?
Well, for me and the family, it's like we have all, like, almost try and have 100% control over what goes into our body, and making sure it's really high quality, and that we prepare all our own food. So, a lot of time goes into cooking food and feeding ourselves every single week, and going and shopping for food and going to farmers markets. That's something that we've been committed to for a bunch of years.
But it takes a lot of time, like you said, which, it's an investment, but it's really, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then on top of that, there's sort of just like relational time that my wife has been just instrumental in prioritizing in our family. Cause like I could so easily just be pulled into work, and to be pulled into like my own thoughts about really work all the time, especially running my own business, that, when's the put the phone away, put the computer away, be present. Let's take time to nurture these relationships. And like, my wife and I have like a midweek, date that we, like a half day that we essentially take, or we either go to therapy together, or we take time together to do something that's fun. And when we don't have kids and we don't have something to attend to. So those would be, kind of the big ones. And then, I mean, sleep, and, getting sunshine, and, some of the other like kind of lifestyle guidelines that we preach to our clients. Like we continue to try and do those things for ourselves, of course, but the other two are really what I think about the most, and try and make most room for.
And as we start wrapping up, this may be kind of repetitive of the question I just asked, but the three questions that I always ask at the end of the podcast. The first one is the three things that you do on a regular basis that have the biggest positive impact on your health.
Yeah, it's I think, well, one that I didn't say is having about a 90-minute window in the morning where I'm the first and only person awake in the house. So
what time do you wake up?
I wake up about 4:15 in order to get that.
Wow. That's impressive.
I don't like to think of it as impressive, because I'm doing it as like out of necessity. Like if it was up to me, I would wake up at 5:30 or 6 and then have my 90 minutes. But the babies wake up at 6,
right.
So I gotta work backwards so that I can have. It's the only quiet time I have all day, because I work. My office is at the gym. I'm in the gym. There's people there all the time. From the moment my kids wake up until they go to bed, if I'm at home, I'm on with them. And then my wife and I want to have connection time in the evening. And I'm somebody that really like grew up very introverted and very, like relying on my own time, like where no one's around. And so I think that was the hardest aspect of becoming a father, was losing that in a way. And so here I am trying to find it with my, early morning wake ups, and which I really love. And I'll wake up at 4:15 some days and be like really tired, but I'm like, this is going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And
what do you do in that time during those 90 minutes?
I do. There's always coffee involved.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hot tub and a cold shower that's typically involved.
Okay.
There might be like listening to some audiobook or some stretching or if I have like work things that are on my mind that like I want to plug away at a little bit, I'll do that. It's not a totally set routine, but it's it's definitely got like a feel to it. And when my wife wakes up around 6 and when the baby's up, like it's such a welcomed, like, oh, I have people I get to spend time with, versus when I come home at the end of the day and we all like arrive at the house at the same time and it's chaotic. Like it's such a different experience of being with family when I get to enter into it at my own pace or when I just get like arrive in it. And so that's number one. And then the food thing I think is probably, something that we touched on already, which is so valuable. And then movement, for me. And it's, I now train 6 days a week. I used to train 5 days a week with like double days. And now I'm just like 60 to 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week. Some days are higher intensity than others, but that building some training in each day where I get to move in like a somewhat calculated, purposeful way. Those are often my best days. My day where I'm like, don't have anything scheduled at the gym. It's often the hardest. And I it's like our Sunday, I get to be with the family more, which I love. But I kind of wish I could just like hop on a bike and go for a mountain bike ride for, at a scheduled time, because that movement, and I do believe we should all be moving towards getting people to move every day. Like a general population person that comes in, they're like, hey, how many days a week should I work out? And someone's like 3 days a week. It's like, nope. Like you should move every day. You have to move every day. And if it's a workout or if it's just moving, it needs to happen. So, you program rest days for athletes because they need them to recover and adapt and to get better. I don't think we program rest days for our clients who are just looking to just feel good. Like they shouldn't be training so intensely that they need to take a day and a half off to recover from that. I think it should be like, there should be movement that happens. And they should get sore from their workouts and feel like maybe not 100% when they come back to move the next day, but that movement that they do should nurture them and get them healthy and feeling better faster. That's it.
Yeah. And like you said, it can be different. It can be going for a mountain bike ride with your family or going for a walk or doing yoga or, any other type of movement, so long as you're moving your body. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And it's protected, specified time, that it, like, oh, well, I walked up like a couple flights of stairs yesterday. It's like, but you didn't like premeditate that. Like it's gotta be.
That's out of necessity. Scheduled. Yeah. What's one thing that you think would have a big impact on your health, but you have a hard time implementing it?
Yeah, I know you asked this question. I thought about it. It was something to do with like meditation and breathing and just stillness. It's, knowing how all those things I mentioned, like whatever that practice looks like where people can tap or can sort of tune into the level that their nervous system is vibrating at. Like, are you sympathetic? Are you more parasympathetic? Those 2 years that I took off between school and medical school taught me a lot about that, about what it means to like tap in and use your breath and use meditation and to calm down. And it's probably the area I'm most interested in right now in terms of my own health and fitness, and then looking and observing and like kind of evaluating what it looks like for other people. My time during the day to connect with my own like thoughts and feelings and do my meditation is more sympathetic driven. It's when I train, and I don't have that built in yet. I've struggled to build it in. in like more of a parasympathetic, like lower my nervous system vibration, and do some more calming, deeper breathing and belly breathing and that kind of thing. Because I just know that the accumulation of hours up in high sympathetic drive versus parasympathetic drive is the balance of that. And really we should be more, the parasympathetic nervous system needs to be the dominant one in our lives. The way I approach life in in the culture I'm surrounded by and how I'm wired, or how I've trained myself to be wired, is like a little bit opposite. So, and having gone through the experience of seeing how that imbalance impacts my physical health. So like being, connected to my blood work and seeing what my digestive health has looked like over the years, and what the first 3 years of having these two babies has done to me physically, like seeing my blood chemistry, seeing my hormone balance, seeing what happened when I was, what competitive CrossFit did to me. It's like shining a spotlight on like, I'm a healthy person by all people's measures. Like Marcus is so healthy. Oh my gosh, he does this. He eats perfect. He trains. Like, yeah, well, let me show you my blood profile right now. Cause it's not a picture of health. Like there's some things that are off. And I know that the stress thing is a big part of that. And that's not created by me eating bad food, me overtraining, me having deadlines that are crushing me. It's more of like how I think about the things that are in my way or the obstacles that I face, and the thoughts that turn into physiological responses is what probably, somebody in my exact same lifestyle and same environment that has a different way of perceiving the world may not feel these things at all. And I know that the path to me connecting to that is through stillness and through breath and through meditation or through some quiet practice. And it's hard for me to get connected to that despite knowing how important it is. So that's why I'm working very hard towards that now.
It's so true. I feel the same way, but it's so important. And it's one of those things it's hard to see, but so many people where stress and sleep deprivation are driving that, sort of inhibiting them from experiencing that full health, when even though they may be eating really well, exercising, doing all those things, those two pieces are so underestimated, I think. Yeah. Last question is, what does a healthy life look like to you?
I think it's a lot of the things that we talked about. It's, cooking our own food. It's being connected to what we put into our bodies. It's having, meaningful relationships that you put energy towards creating connection with and building something out of those relationships. It looks like moving every day, and it looks like getting in touch with or being an observer of the world around you and recognizing that like the speed and the pace that everything is happening at, it's not connected to your health. That's driven by things that are actually killing everybody. And that if you want to ride that wave and, then you can easily get swept up into it. And like, it's going to take a conscious effort to just do something that's, different and more purposeful. That's all the things I talked about, just sort of compiled in a nutshell.
I love it. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your whole story, and I hope that people will connect with it and learn from it. I know there's a lot of listeners who maybe are considering medical school or considering, different paths towards this ultimate vision of how can we help the people around us live healthier lives and reach their full potential. And as you've shown, you can get to that end vision in many different ways. And it's amazing to see, how you're so successful now and able to help people in the way that you want to help them. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for giving me a platform to talk. And I love seeing that you're approaching that same vision and you're doing it within the medical industry, and you're doing it as a physician. And it is totally, I think we probably had a lot of the same drive and goals and kind of vision and core values heading into medicine. And we took different paths. We crossed paths at the 2014 games, and then we diverged. And it's so cool to see you and doing it your own way. So I totally admire that so much.
Well, thank you.
Because I know how hard it is. I know I had a glimpse into just how hard it is.
Well, it's taking quite a while, but it's we're almost there. So, and we're all, at the end of the day, we're all kind of on the same team trying to help people be healthy. So,
you got it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marcus.
Thanks, Julie, so much.
Hey there, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I connected with Marcus on so many points in this conversation, but as usual, here are some of my biggest takeaways. Number one was the importance of introspection. So Marcus talked a lot about how impactful his time away was, both prior to starting medical school as well as after he decided to leave in that summertime after his first year. It's so easy for us to get caught up in reaching for the next step of our studies or our career paths, often without taking the time for self-reflection and to really think about the path and whether the path that you're on is really the right one for you. Taking some time away where you can really sit with your own thoughts and not be swayed by the influence of others' expectations can be very valuable and is something that I think we can all benefit from at certain decision points in our lives. So it was great to see that Marcus did that when he made his big decision. The second takeaway that I have is on a similar note, and it was how Marcus and I talked a lot about the power of purpose. Now, we talked about this both in finding purpose for ourselves in our own journeys, but also the importance of helping our clients or our patients to think about their own purpose. This is so important in order to drive changes in behavior or help people reach their goals. If we can connect goals to a specific purpose in life or what motivates people, they're going to be much more successful. So it's a good question to ask yourself, what do you want your own health for? What do you want your fitness for? The third takeaway that I have is about earning intensity. I loved this concept that Marcus talked about. We talk a lot in CrossFit about the charter that CrossFit has with mechanics, consistency, and intensity. So first you have to demonstrate that you can perform the movement, then do it with consistency before you earn the ability to perform it at intensity. And I really liked how Marcus brought other lifestyle factors into the mix. So if you outside the gym and the rest of your life, you're going 1,000,000 miles an hour, then maybe what your body needs most is just to slow down, to take a deep breath, not more intensity. I've seen this ring true in my own life as things have gotten crazy outside the gym, and I'm sure many of you listening can relate. So making time for relaxation or some low intensity exercise to balance things out, stretching, all of that can help to build the parasympathetic tone that's so important for our own health. So thanks again for tuning in. To make sure you never miss an episode and to receive exclusive content from me, head to my website, juliefoucher.com, and subscribe to my email list. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and consider giving the podcast a 5-star rating on iTunes. Also, don't forget to share your stories. If you or someone you know has used lifestyle to overcome a serious health challenge, please send me an email at info@juliefoucher.com. I'll choose some of these inspiring stories to share here on future episodes. Don't forget you can train with me through Beyond the Whiteboard by visiting trainwithjuliefoucher.com. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on Pursuing Health. This episode is brought to you by ButcherBox. I'm very excited to share with you a brand new offer from ButcherBox this month. In addition to $20 off your first order, ButcherBox is giving away free burgers all summer long. If you go to butcherbox.com/Julie before August 8th, you'll receive a pack of 6 free burgers in every single box you receive from now all the way until October 15th. If you've been listening to Pursuing Health, it should not come as a surprise to you that I care a whole lot about where my food comes from, and that's especially true when it comes to meat. I do believe that meat can have a place in a well-rounded diet, but there's a huge difference when it comes to animals raised in feedlots that are fed primarily corn and soy and routinely given growth hormones and antibiotics, and those that are responsibly raised, fed their natural diet, and not given any of these growth hormones or antibiotics. It's really, really hard to find high-quality meat like this these days, but ButcherBox makes it super easy because they deliver 100% grass-fed and finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage breed pork, and wild Alaskan sockeye salmon directly to your doorstep. All of their products are humanely raised and never ever given antibiotics or hormones. This gives me personally peace of mind because I know that I can trust my meat is the highest quality out there and is going to taste amazing. Plus, they offer free shipping anywhere in the contiguous 48 United States, which is awesome. ButcherBox has put together a very special deal for all Pursuing Health listeners from now until August 8th. When you order your first box, you'll get $20 off plus a pack of 6 free burgers in every single box you receive from now until October 15th. This is the perfect way to celebrate summertime with lots of outdoor grilling. Once again, that's butcherbox.com/Julie to get $20 off your first order and free burgers all summer. But hurry up and check it out now because the deal is going to end on August 8th.